Hello, and welcome to this episode of the Makeover Your Mom Life podcast. My name is Rachel Jenks, and today we are going to be talking about surviving the in laws through the holidays. This can be a very, very triggering time for many of us who have in laws that are difficult, that we don't enjoy, that cause conflict in our family, because it's kind of a time of the year when we tend to spend more time with our family, whether it's Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, whatever it might be, it is family time. And there are parties and gift giving and goodies and all the things. And we want to enjoy ourselves. We want to have a wonderful time during this holiday season. And sometimes dealing with the in laws can make that difficult. So I want to talk to you today about how you can manage that, how you can still enjoy the holidays, even if your in laws drive you nuts or if they cause a ton of conflict and pain over the holidays. Now, even if you do not have in laws that you spend time with, you can apply these tools that I'm going to share with you in this podcast to all the people in your life. You can apply them to your own parents or siblings that you have to maybe manage a little bit over the holidays. So here's the thing about other people in our lives. The fact is that we cannot control what other people do ever. We just cannot. They are their own human beings. And just as I'm sure you don't want to be controlled, they don't want to be controlled. They don't want to be told what to do. They don't want to be forced to do certain things. They don't want to be manipulated. They want to live their own life and do their own things, just like you want to live your life and do your own things. And as I've mentioned on this podcast many times before, you don't have to do or not you don't have to do or not do anything. You get to decide. We all know there are consequences to our actions, and so we tend to follow certain rules or we want to conform with society in doing things, but we don't have to do anything. And your in-laws, and in the same situation, your parents, your siblings, the other people in your life, they don't have to do anything anyway. And when you try to control them by getting your in-laws to treat you with respect or conform to a certain way of eating the meals or treat your children in a certain way, they are going to meet you with resistance, which is only going to exacerbate the problem. So as I always talk about on this podcast and with my clients, is the only thing you can control is you, and that is what you need to focus on. Also, keeping in mind that when you have a conflict of some sort with your in laws and you let it affect how you spend the holidays and your joy and happiness over the holidays, it is going to affect only you. It probably doesn't affect them at all. How you feel isn't going to affect them, it's not going to interfere with their life, their way of being. They may not care at all. It's up to you. So, you probably heard this before that when you are, so for example, for me, I'll give my example with my in-laws. My in-laws used to trigger me something terrible. We had some early conflicts early on. I don't think they thought I was the right person for their son. They were probably, in my opinion, trying to get me to just go away. And so we had a lot of early conflict, and I didn't like them. I didn't like spending time with them. I'd spend a lot of the time we did spend with them being crabby and grumpy. That when they would do things with my kids, I felt like they talked to them like babies. They bought them baby gifts. I didn't like that when they opened birthday and Christmas presents, that my in-laws would like talked the whole time they were opening the gift and tell them practically what it was before they opened it, and then they tell them what they used it for and where they could keep it, whether it was like we had my husband and I practiced law together at the time, and so we had an office with a bunch of their toys that, oh, you can take that to the office, or you can do this with that. And I was like, just shut up and let them open the present, right? And it drive me crazy. And so I'd spend the entire gift opening being irritated and annoyed because of the things that they were saying. So when I look back at those early days of gift opening, second birthday, fifth birthday, I remember being really annoyed over the gift opening. I don't remember any of the gifts that they received. I don't remember the smiles on their faces or the joys. I suppose I could go look back at the pictures. But what I remember is my irritation over how the process was going. And it just bugged me so much. And I realized that what I was doing is, you probably heard people say this, but I was drinking poison and I was expecting them to die. Now, I'm not wanting my in laws to die, but basically, what I was doing is I was the one being miserable, like, and complaining and expecting them to stop doing what they were doing. And they weren't going to. Even if I told them to stop doing it, even if I complained to my husband about it, they weren't going to stop doing it. The only thing that I had control over was how I reacted and how I thought and felt about the situation. So one day I just thought, what's the worst thing in the world that's going on here? They're telling my kids this whole crap while they're opening presents. I don't need to do that when they open presents for me. I can decide how I react when they open presents from me. And I can decide how I want to act when they open presents from my in laws. And I don't need to let it ruin my day. So, in the later years of my kids opening up, and sadly, it's when it's not quite as sweet and fun, my kids don't have those looks of surprise on their face and the smiles and the excitement that they did when they were little. Now, my memories are of the gifts that they received and the reactions, albeit very minimal, that they have as they've gotten older. I am enjoying the time with my kids because I'm not letting what my in-laws do interfere with it. And to be honest, my in-laws don't bug me as much, right? So I like to when I host the holidays, I like to do the whole to do. Like I like the made from scratch, the potatoes and the stuffing from scratch. And we do the turkey. My husband smokes the turkey. And I like to pull out the china and the fancy crystal and all the fancy stuff. And I'd get so pissed because my mother in law would show up with her store bought this on her like Corel brand plates. I don't know if you guys, any of y'all grew up in the 70s and you had Corel plates. And I just thought, you're cheapening my meal. You're making my meal like not as fancy and as wonderful. And I'd get really irritated because I don't know if any of you are from the Midwest or know about lefse. Lefse is something us Norwegian people do on holidays. And it's basically like a potato. It's a tortilla, but instead of being made with like corn or flour, it's made with potatoes, I believe. And we spread butter on it and we sprinkle white sugar on it and we roll it up and we eat it. And my mother-in-law did this wrong in my mind, right? She did lefse wrong. When I grew up, my mom and I, which we're probably going to do later today, today's actually Thanksgiving morning here. We are going to take the lefse and my kids and we'll butter the lefse and we'll sprinkle it with sugar and we'll roll it out and we'll put it on a little plate so that when we're eating Thanksgiving dinner, you just pass around the little tray of lefse and you eat the lefse and you grab one and you eat it, right? To me, like that makes perfect sense. My mother-in-law did things differently. And my judgment was that this was stupid the way she did it. And what she did is she brought to my house the lefse, and she brought to my house a very cold stick of butter, and she brought to my house a shaker with sugar in it and put it on the table. So when people had their Thanksgiving plates full of stuffing and potatoes and green beans and turkey and jello, gotta love the jello here in the Midwest, we had to butter our own lefse. There was no room on the plate. The butter wasn't stuffed enough. And it was like, this was all wrong. And I'd get so pissed. As soon as she walked in the door with that lefse and the butter and the sugar, I was like, are you freaking kidding me, woman? Like, how are we going to do this? Why won't you make it ahead of time and bring it already done? And so I'd take over, I'd take the lefse and the butter and I'd soften it in the microwave and I'd get the sugar and I'd like force this upon the lefse, right? On how it was going to be because I wanted it done a certain way or I was going to be pissed. But here's the thing. My mother-in-law has traditions of her own. I may think they're stupid or dumb or pointless, right? She has traditions of her own. Her traditions involve buttering the lefse at the table. Her traditions involve not using fancy dishes. And her traditions involve just buying things at the store because it makes the day easier, right? And those are her traditions. And I can allow her to have those traditions because honestly, buttering the lefse didn't ruin the meal. It didn't take away from the time I had spent on my fancy stuffing and my turkey and my mashed potatoes. I could let her have that. And now I let her have that. Right? Today we're having Thanksgiving with my family. My husband and I alternate holidays. And we won't do that, right? We'll have the lefse all done ahead of time. But on the years that she brings the lefse, I can let her have that. And it doesn't need to ruin my day. I can still go on with my day. Now, these examples I'm giving in this podcast are probably kind of silly examples, but I wanted to show you how even the silliest things can create so much trauma and frustration and upsetness and totally ruin a holiday because of the way we think and feel. And when I decided to shift the way that I thought and felt about the things that my in-laws did, then I was able to enjoy the holiday more. Right? So even taking this to a bigger extreme, maybe you and your families have huge political fights every holiday and you dread getting together on those holidays because of the political conversations that you know are going to take place and the fighting that's going to take place. And eventually people are going to be sitting in separate rooms and crabby and grumpy about it. But you get to decide how you want your holiday to look. you can decide, and I know it sounds impossible in this moment, but I'd love for you to practice it today. You get to decide that while your in-laws and your parents or whoever are fighting over the political things going on in the world, you can decide to sit back and think, isn't this interesting? I'm curious about what other people's opinions are about the holidays. You can decide to think differently. And when you think differently, you are going to feel differently. You're going to be able to enjoy your day more because you're not letting it get to you. Okay. Now, for a really extreme example, maybe your in laws attack the crap out of you the whole time that you spend with them, and you dread it and you're miserable and you get done with those holidays and you feel awful about yourself, about your parenting, about what kind of a wife you are, right? Those things happen. And I used to live that with my in laws. And the thing is that when we internalize those things that they say or do and make them mean something about us, we are going to be miserable. I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that early on in our relationship, my husband and I have been married for 20 years, so it's been kind of a while. But early on in the relationship, my in laws were not um, fans of me. We'll just put it that way, right? They didn't like my husband and I had different religious backgrounds. We had different just different backgrounds in general. The way that we grew up was very, very different. We'll say. So I grew up. My mom worked. My parents were divorced. His parents are still married. His mom hasn't worked since he was born. And I think they had this is again my thoughts, but I think they had a different idea about what who he should marry, and they just weren't a big fan of me, right? And so I would get done with gatherings with them just feeling awful because I felt like everything they were doing was attacking me and everything I did was wrong. Now a lot of that was coming from my thoughts of things that I thought they were thinking or things that I thought they believed that probably weren't exactly accurate. Because honestly, as soon as I shifted the way that I thought about those and I reacted differently to them when I was with them, our whole relationship changed. And this is kind of what all of my coaching and my philosophy is all about when it comes to fixing your marriage or fixing a relationship with your mom or with your kids. It starts with you because when you start changing the way that you react to other people, their reactions are going to change. Like you can change the whole dynamic just by changing how you act. So I'm inviting you to, if your in-laws attack the crap out of you and they have nothing nice to say about you and they treat you like crap and they're awful and maybe they even scream and yell at you and mentally abuse you. We'll go so far as to say mentally abuse you on the holidays. You get to decide how you are going to what you're going to make that mean. And if you decide that you're going to make it mean that they're full of crap and they're stupid and they're dumb and they don't know you and they don't know what kind of a mom you are or what kind of a wife you are, then you are going to feel differently and you're going to react differently to them. So what if on today or the sometime during the holidays or ever your mother-in-law attacks the way that you butter the lefse, we'll just say, right? You get to decide if you're going to make it mean that you're a crappy cook and that she hates you and then snap back at her. Or you can just decide to be like, well, that's her opinion. She can think that and I'm okay with that because I'm confident in who I am. My goal when I coach the women that I work with is to build up your strength and resilience so strong that what your in-laws, what your husbands, what your mom, what your kids, what your coworkers, your boss, what they say and think and do around you doesn't affect you because you are so strong and resilient in who you are. And you can change how you react to them. And that is going to change the dynamic between the two of you. That's what's going to change the relationship. I believe 100% that you can fix a relationship with your husband. You can fix one with your in laws. You can fix the one with your mom, with your kids, if you're willing to do the work. And it's hard work. It's impossible. It feels impossible, we'll say, for you to sit there while your mother in law is attacking your turkey and just be like, yep, that's her thought and that's her opinion. Right? You're not going to be like standoffish and snotty and be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about, mother-in-law. Like, you don't know. You're just going to be like, yep, all right, thanks for letting me know, and being able to move on and create the holiday that you want. So, your steps, your homework for the holiday season is decide what type of holiday you want to have. What do you want this to look like? And then step 2 is going to be decide. Decide how you are going to react to your in laws ahead of time. Decide that you're going to let these things roll off your back. Decide that you're going to think, well, that's your opinion. Decide that you are going to create a different experience for yourself because you want to have memories of your holidays that are amazing and wonderful. You don't want to remember just the fight because the fact is that we remember the worst parts about things. We don't remember the good things. So the less worse things you have going on a holiday, the better your memories are going to be of that holiday. Okay, that's all I've got for you. I've gone on long enough with the in-laws, but I am here to tell you that it is possible to enjoy the holiday with your in-laws, no matter how awful they've been in the past. Okay. And just a really quick kind of going back to something I said earlier when I was talking about how I can let what my mother-in-law says about my cake or my turkey or whatever kind of roll off my back, because she's of course going to have judgments because she thinks the turkey should be a certain way or the cake should be a certain way. And I don't want her judgments, and I can decide to react back to those judgments, right? But goes on the flip side as well, right? My mother-in-law doesn't want me judging her like store-bought food on a Corel plate. And so if I want to change the dynamic with her, it's up to me to decide that I'm not going to judge her, and on the same side, that I'm not going to take her judgments to heart. And I know you're thinking right now, why do I have to do all the work? You do. You do need to start doing all the work because you're the one that wants to change. You're the one listening to this podcast. You can't make her do anything. You need to do the work. So you need to let go of the judgments of the in laws. And you need to also let those judgments of you that they make roll off of your back. And this podcast, like I said at the beginning, applies to any relationships that you have, whether it's your husband, your kids, your coworker, your boss, your in-laws, your own parents. You get to be the catalyst. You get to be the pattern interrupt and change the whole dynamic of the relationship. All right, that really is all I've got. I just had to add that little side note because I felt like I didn't make that clear enough. If you are interested in learning more about making over your marriage, you can head on over to racheljenks.com/episode 52. This is episode 52. I think last week I made a mistake. Or you can also just go to racheljenks.com and click on podcast, and you'll find all the podcast episodes there. And you can click on the link in any of the most recent podcast episodes and grab your free Makeover Your Marriage plan. And that is going to give you some steps to take to start fixing your marriage so that you can avoid divorce. We do not want to hit the D button no more, right? So head on over, grab that freebie. If you're interested in checking out the Makeover Your Marriage coaching program, you can also find that link in the podcast pages as well on my website. You can also find it on my website at racheljenks.com. Just click on work with me and you can learn more about that as well. You can book a call through there and we can chat more about this. So thank you so much for listening. Have a happy holiday season, and we'll chat with you next week. Bye-bye.